Hi, I'm Liane Jackson, senior law editor at Forbes, and today my guest is John Phillips. He's a Jacksonville attorney who specializes in criminal law, civil rights, as well as other forms of plaintiff's work. He was also the attorney for Omarosa Manigault Newman, who in 2022, Trump's campaign was ordered to pay my guest 1.3 million in attorney's fees over its failed lawsuit against Omarosa for revelations in her tell-all book about the former president. They said she had violated a non-disclosure agreement. Omarosa, as many will remember, was a former White House aide. She also was on the celebrity show hosted by Trump, The Apprentice. And she wrote a book in 2018 called Unhinged, an insider's account of the Trump White House. And that's where my guest, John Phillips, entered the picture when Trump's campaign sued her for violating the non-disclosure agreement. Thank you for joining me, John, today. How are you
Thank
doing?
you. Great.
So you were awarded a significant amount in attorney's fees. Trump is known for being extremely litigious. I'm just curious, were you able to collect on that ultimate amount? There was talk that they were going to appeal. How did that turn out for you and Omarosa?
Yeah, I think the last coverage that media really got to see was the victory, the order by the arbitrator of our gross attorney's fees. And I believe their attorneys, Trump's attorneys, said we're going to appeal. I said basically, I'll go get his golden toilets if I have to. And then how, litigation usually comes to a compromise. And I got a phone call and said, "Hey, can we stop this?" And I said, "Certainly." And that's probably where my answer can stop. I tell people, if you saw on Instagram that I bought something, maybe you can assume that I got something. But it was, for the official answer, it was settled amicably, and I can confirm that I was paid, and that it is over.
Well, there are a number of cases that the former president is currently involved with, of course, a number of criminal trials, several of which are being delayed, the current hush money case in New York that's going forward. But there's other civil cases that are have gone on. What is it like to be an attorney up against the former president, his large legal team, and trying to find ways to sort of be a David versus Goliath in a way? It was kind of was your situation. Can you talk a little bit
And
about
I
that?
love that. I love the David versus Goliath analogy. I'll take it and run with it. Because to me, I am one of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Davids out there who practice law, who weren't quite sure exactly what they were going to do with their law degree, who aren't the third degree prodigy of the prodigy lawyer. I went to the University of Alabama. I bartended during law school. I wasn't great at law school and started my practice, moved to Jacksonville, Florida, raised a family. And the thing that people don't understand about Omarosa is she married a pastor here in Florida, and we saw each other on the news. We knew each other from another case I had been involved with, Jordan Davis, where a young man got shot and killed over loud music. And so it was just normal for us to have this conversation. And she had me look at her NDAs and the situation, and said that she had Trump and Team Trump, breathing down her neck with a lawsuit. And I love a challenge. I have done probably 10 more First Amendment related cases since then. At the time, I think this was one of my first. And it's intimidating. And then you get Charles Harder of Gawker fame, right? Hulk Hogan versus Gawker fame, representing, the former president, and at times the president during this lawsuit, and his Ivy League team of Beverly Hills, literally Beverly Hills lawyers. And it's just me and my band of merry men here and women here in Florida. And what we knew we had was an NDA that was being used to oppress normal everyday speech, and particularly political speech. And you can't do that. And so, when Omarosa's on a book tour or whatever and says, not my circus, not my monkeys, that's not, that's political speech. And so, most of the comments she got sued for, it didn't take, I'll put myself up against a Yale or Harvard lawyer any day. Got a little Alabama junkyard dog in me, but it was so clear of a violation that we figured we could win it. And, it took 3 years, but we got it done.
Well, what are your observations with what's going on currently in the hush money trial? When you talk about non-disclosures, when we're talking about there's gag orders against Trump, he's talking about his First Amendment rights to speak, and also Stormy Daniels is talking about the fact that she was trying to sell her story in this catch and kill scheme. So there's a lot of talk about what we can talk about, what can't be talked about, that seems to follow Trump in Trump world in terms of his actions and also in all of these cases. What are your thoughts on what's going on with the trial in terms of Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal, and the idea that, there's deny, 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 and there's attempts to suppress conversation or speech on both sides? I know it's kind of a broad question, but I'm just interested in what you're thinking when you watch this trial and think of any parallels to your experience.
It's fascinating. For a good while after we were done with litigating against Trump World, we stopped. And yet early on, when we started this litigation, I just threw up a website. My team threw up a website, trumpsnda.com. I think it's still up. And we invited people to send us the different variations of the NDA, because it was a campaign NDA and a White House NDA and an NDA that governed his personal relationships and the catch and kill stuff. And so we had a profile basically about McDougal and Stormy and everybody. And, it opened up doors to conversations with Michael Cohen and Avenatti and all of these folks who, didn't know me from Adam until all of a sudden, Forbes and the Wall Street Journal and everybody's talking about this First Amendment case between Trump and Omarosa. And it's a fascinating area of litigation and one that I love, because certainly there are times, employees of mine, we do have some level of NDA. We deal with attorney-client privilege and celebrity clients, and I don't want them to go spill information out on the streets or to tabloids. But on the same token, they can be too restrictive. If my employees want to say, I think he was a pompous ass, so be it. Like I'm not so sensitive, but Trump was. And so not only was he oversensitive and still is, but he had meddlings with a lot of illegal and unethical behavior. And so when when you deal in the shady world of things, I'm probably going to get sued for this, but when you deal with the shady world of things, you need lawyers like Michael Cohen and NDAs and catch and kill agreements. I don't think most of them were ethical, and particularly as it relates to that trial with use of campaign finance abuses. It's an hour-long conversation to even talk about all the amount of money that was spent in red hat campaign donations to fight lawsuits and to hire lawyers. Like it's never before happened. I don't know that level will ever happen again, but it's the nature of who Trump is.
Yeah, that's part of what's the prosecutors are attempting to draw an arrow from to the election interference claims, the fact that he is trying to suppress any type of negative news, any type of negative information that might have gotten out about him when he was campaigning. And of course, Stormy Daniels' testimony is part of that they're trying to say that the hush money was intended to in furtherance of this broad election interference conspiracy, which would be the felony counts that they're really seeking. It's interesting that you're saying that part of his playbook is to suppress anything negative that could come out about him, whether it was related to his political aspirations or I guess his personal business. Or do you believe that a lot of this over the years has compounded because of politics? Or is this just something he's always, as far as you know, something he's always been has always done in terms of non-disclosure agreements and trying to prevent negative press to come out against him.
So, some of this comes from me being inexperienced in wanting to win a high profile case, but and then I got to put it on a timesheet, right? But that hopefully one day I would get paid, and it was. But on my timesheet, there was reading Art of the Deal. And in Trump's book, Art of the Deal, he talks about, weaponized litigation and historically, and I was writing a blog on it, historically, under English common law, the rich were the only ones legally allowed to hire lawyers. And they know how to weaponize litigation, even though now everybody can hire a lawyer. And in fact, this country has gotten it right that we provide indigent attorneys. But everything was weaponized. In the case against Omarosa, the whole point was to shut her up during the election period. And it worked to some extent. He didn't, at the end of the day, the fact that campaign donations had to pay off an attorney's fee, I don't think they care. They got her to be quiet, and that was, the means justified the end as you kick the can down the road of how it's all going to be paid for, with all of these cases. And it was important for Stormy Daniels not to come out and tell her full story, and it did work for a while. And so I do think it's at his core who he is, and he told us that, with Art of the Deal. It's directly in there about how to weaponize, lawyers and your allies to maim, destroy, or silence your enemies.
Do you feel that these sorts of tactics, though, rise to the level of election interference? When you're watching, from an attorney's perspective, from a defense attorney's perspective, watching this, even from a you do both sides, plaintiffs and defense. But watching this, do you feel that the prosecution is making its case, though, there's financial record disclosure questions that they may or may not have a strong case for? But do you feel that this sort of hush money, catch and kill, all of this, and trying to prevent negative press as you're campaigning for the highest political office in the country, potentially the world, do you feel like the prosecution is making its case to the jury and the American public?
I think the prosecution is making its case, and more than think, I believe it has to matter. You can't just use other people's money to run for the highest office that America allows, and do anything you want with that money. And look, there's lots wrong with campaign finance laws, but the way they used it, and again, I'm in a little bit of a different situation than a political commentator, because I've had 15 calls with Michael Cohen. I've been in rooms where we discuss, I've talked to Jessica Denson and AJ Delgado and a lot of the folks that have been on this witness stand, I've had communications with. And so I get things at a different level, and it's dirty. And the main thing here is to follow the money, and what was it used for? This wasn't Trump's money. It rarely ever is, but this wasn't Trump's money. This was money that was spent by people who were sold that this was for him to be used for hats and posters and political related things, that he was using to hide from the American public, from the voters, all these bad things about him, or silence his enemies. And that's where it crosses a line. And this jury, I hope, gets it right. And I hope Congress, eventually comes to its senses and says, look, we can't keep allowing no rules presidential elections.
John, this has been really fascinating. I appreciate your insiders analysis of what happened because of the background you've had litigating against Trump. And I really appreciate you joining me today, and hopefully you'll come back on again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.